This is a Mazda RX7. In fact, this is my brother's Mazda RX7. Third generation FD, ran from 92 to 2002. 13B twin turbo rotary engine, and I will admit, for years I've taken the mick out of my brother for failing apex seals, expensive engine rebuilds every few years, but I've never actually driven a rotary powered car. And today that's going to change. Now I have to say, I do love the styling of the RX7, particularly in FD form. This is a very early FD, a 93 car. As I said, they started production in 92. With the 13B REW, twin rotor, twin turbo engine. Being a Japanese spec car, it produces 255 brake horsepower. The UK cars did 237. It's also 218 pound-feet of torque. Both at quite high RPM compared to the American pushrod V8 engines that I'm used to. So what is a rotary engined car? Unlike a conventional piston engine car, where you've got pistons going up and down on a crankshaft, got conrods, camshafts, cam followers, bush rods, rockers, valves, so many parts moving backwards and forwards at however many thousand RPM, 12,000 in some applications. This engine was designed by a chap called Felix Vankel. While it's named after him, he wasn't actually instrumental in bringing it through to reliable production. But the initial design, obviously named after him, was actually a design triumph. There's only 3 moving parts. 2 rotors, in this case, which are basically triangular bits of metal that move around a concentric shaft inside a chamber that's effectively a pinched oval. This creates the combustion chambers within the oval. Because of that, it's a very smooth revving engine. Unfortunately, the sealing is by way of some small apex seals in the tips of the rotors, and these are what fails. The engines need to be looked after. Sympathetically, they need the right oils, they need to be warmed up. They're not good engines for lots of short journeys. But I'm led to believe, as long as you look after the engines, accept their quirks and features over that of a more conventional engine, they can go on for lots and lots of miles. I won't go into vast amounts of detail, but it is well worth Googling rotary engines. There are lots of fantastic videos that really show how they work. And while it ultimately turned out to be a slightly flawed design, high oil consumption, high fuel consumption, they are an engineering triumph. Lots of manufacturers tried to make it work. Hell, in the 70s there was even a prototype mid-engined rotary powered Chevrolet Corvette that was actually ended up being saved by Tom Falconer of Claremont Corvettes and is currently on display in the Corvette Museum in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Citroen tried with the GSA. There was even some rotary powered motorbikes, but ultimately it was only Mazda that would push the engine and really try and make it work as well as it could. And from 1978 through to 2002 with the RX7, later with the RX8, and back in the 60s with things like the Cosmo, they really did try their best. Performance-wise, 156 miles an hour, 0 to 60 in 5.4 seconds. The car weighs less than 1,300 kilos. So performance figures are on par with, say, a Chevrolet Corvette of the same age, be a C4 with the LT1. Although the Corvette produces a lot more power, a lot more torque, it weighs a lot more. So on paper, performance-wise, they're very similar, but they deliver that power in a very, very different way. Now, as I said, this was a Japanese import. They only produced, or only imported 210 to the UK. Since, through the grey market, a lot of grey imports have since come to the UK. And there are some differences. I've already touched upon the difference in power. 237 for a UK spec versus 255 for a Japanese spec. Being a Japanese import, bizarrely for taxation purposes, this is a 1400cc or a 1300cc. A genuine UK one is classed as a 2600cc. Also, the UK versions and European versions had cubby boxes and a parcel shelf behind the front seats. It was strictly a two-seater. The Japanese ones do have rear seats of a fashion. Now, I am a big fan of the style of these RX7s, especially in FD format. They're a very curvaceous style, and in actual fact, certainly from this angle, the front very much looks like a C5 Chevrolet Corvette. I wonder if Chevrolet took design influence from this. Obviously you have the pop-up headlights that all sports cars had to have of this period. This is running RX8 alloy wheels. As you see, a very curvaceous body style. Even the doors are curved. I particularly like the fact that the door handles and locks are hid up in this black panel at the top. So while they're not out of sight, they are sort of hidden, helping a very clean line to it. I particularly think it's most successful from the rear. I do like these rear lights, the way they go right across the car. Again, very curvaceous. I think this is probably the most successful angle of it, and rear of cars is something that manufacturers really do seem to struggle with these days. They really, with all the legislation they have to stick to, they just don't seem to be able to do rear car styling very well. Mazda certainly did with this. Well, inside it's very typically Japanese. Lots of black plastic. This sort of suede cloth style seating. More black plastic on the dashboard. And as I said, an attempt at rear seats, which I'm not going to try and fit in. Very driver focused interior style. The dashboard sort of swoops rounds the driver, and just giving all the information one requires: coilants, oil pressure, fuel, big tachometer in the middle there, as all sports cars should have, and 180 mile an hour speedo over there. One bizarre little trinket that I do find rather amusing, and I really like, strangely enough, the one stop window up and down. In most cars, press the button and the window goes up and down. Not in this. Oh no. If you look, you press it down and it stays down and then pops back up. And the same going up, stays up and then pops down. Isn't that sweet? Inside the boot, it's rather shallow. Obviously have your oils, your cleaning products. And here's something to show a bit more about the engine. Here is a rotor. And the apex seals would go across there, and more seals around here. This is the pinched oval chamber, and this effectively spins on a concentric shaft like so. Creating, as you can see, combustion chambers in these parts, with the spark plug over here. So as this ignites, like it would force a piston down in a conventional engine, in this case it forces this to rotate on the concentric shaft, creating forward momentum. Brilliant design. Feel that turbo kick in. Now this one's done 125,000 miles, so it's certainly not in its first flush of youth. And yes, the ride is perhaps a touch harsh, definitely worse than the old Corvette was, although this is sitting on quite low profile tyres, I have to say. And this is a particularly rough stretch of road. But the gearbox is nice short throw. The seating position, while you can tell Oriental people are slightly smaller than I. There's not a lot of width here, but the pedals are nicely spaced, if albeit slightly offset towards the outside. Again, being a high mileage one, there's a few knocks and rattles and a slightly annoying rattle from this gear stick trim ring. This also isn't my car, so I'm not going to boot it. I have allowed it to warm up, which obviously you need to do with rotary engines. Limits. But at 30 mile an hour, it's quite happy to potter along. Now I'd imagine one of these with refreshed suspension, or when it was new, slightly taller profile tyres, would ride a lot nicer, and I think would actually be quite a comfortable car. The seats are relatively comfy, a bit hard, but you know, this is a sports car. Unlike a lot of bucket type seats I do fit in it, there tends to be a trend towards sports cars of recent years where they assume everybody is tiny, and those of us on the slightly more portly side don't fit. But that's not the case here. It's actually quite a nice sound from the exhaust, which surprises me. Certainly not a piston engine sound, it's a sound all of its own, a very unique sound. But quite nice. The steering's very communicative. You can feel everything the road's doing beneath the wheels, but not harshly so. As I said, this really isn't a good piece of road. Clutch is nice, reasonable weight. Brakes have some reasonable feel. Certainly feel that second turbo kick in. Very different in the power delivery to that of say the V8 Corvette. That's a very low down grunt, very progressive grunt. The torque in my current Corvette, the peak torques are like 1400 RPM or something. This, the peak torque, is at something like 5,000 or 6,000 RPM. So this engine does like to be worked, likes to be revved. It's not my car, so I'm certainly not going to push it to its limits in any way, shape or form. but it is nice to experience a rotary engine car for the first time. As I said, this is the third generation. The first generation had a little 12B and was a very lovely design. Very typical 70s design. The second generation, I personally don't think was quite as successful design-wise. Although the second generation was the only generation where they offered a convertible, and we all know how I love a convertible. Be nice to see what a convertible one of these would be like, whether any were ever customised to be convertibles. I will have to look up. Pedals nicely spaced for heel toe. Very direct steering. Of course, being Japanese, the stalks are the wrong way around. Alright, off the roundabout. And there's 60. And there's 70. And that wasn't booting it, that was only part throttle. This was a fresher car and I had permission from the owner to really boot it. As I said, it's not my car. This would be a very, very rapid car. And a car that I think could get you into some serious trouble. As I said, cruising along here at 65. Perfectly relaxed. Bit of wind noise. very smooth revving. The twin turbo setup, so the first turbo comes in at around 2000, the second at about 4000 RPM. Really does give it good grunt without the old-fashioned turbo lag. As I said, the interior is slightly cramped for someone of my stature, shall we say. But it's a nice drive, it handles well, the acceleration is brilliant for a vehicle of this age and relatively small capacity. All the controls are just as you'd like. What of the engine? For years I've taken the mick out of rotary engines. Has my opinion changed? Yes. Well, don't get me wrong, I'm not ready to give up my big pushrod American V8s just yet. There's a lot to be said for this. I don't think I could live with the expensive engine rebuilds every few years, whatever, but as a fun second car, this gets used almost daily, as can be told by the mileage. But as a fun second car where you're only doing 2,000 or 3,000 miles a year perhaps, I can really see the joy in this car. Would I own one? Yes, as a fun second car, I would own one. So in conclusion, I love it, but shh, don't tell my brother.